All right. So today we've got Helen Andrews, man. She has been on my radar for quite some time, and she talks about the feminization of society, and she's got a lot of really great things to say from what I've heard. I've had a lot of people reach out to me asking me to cover her, and so we're going to do just that. So let's dive in, shall we?
You wrote an article based on a speech you gave at the NatCon conference, which exploded the internet, I think it's fair to say, when super viral, caused a lot of debate and discussion. And it's basically, I mean, I'll let you say it in your own words, but it's kind of a little bit about how the fact that women now control, or at least represent, the majority of the employees at many institutions is one of the reasons that society has gone the way it has. Is that fair?
I think that's fair to say. Some people have reacted to the piece by, acting as if I'm saying women cause all the problems in the world. I'm definitely not saying that, but I am saying that feminization has caused one specific, particular problem, and that is wokeness. Like a lot of people, I was baffled by the woke phenomenon. Why did everyone seemingly go crazy all at once in the summer of 2020? It was inexplicable. It seemed to be mass hysteria, genuinely. And the more I thought about what caused it, which is a very important question, because if we know what causes it, we know how to prevent it from happening in the future. I read an article that someone else wrote that put forward a really simple, elegant thesis, which is that wokeness is simply feminine patterns of behavior applied to institutions where women had not been very well represented until recently. Women tend to be more consensus-focused, consensus-oriented. Men, when they're approaching a moral question, will ask, what are the facts? What are the rules? Whereas women will say, what are the relationships at play here? How can we make everybody happy? Mm-hmm. How can we reach an outcome that will satisfy all the parties? As opposed to the male perspective of how do we reach an outcome that is just and according to the rules. That sounded a lot like wokeness to me. And the sort of piece that made it all click into place for me was the coincidence of timing. It is the case, just we can all agree as a matter of fact, that a lot of institutions that went woke or were affected by wokeness became demographically female in the last 5 years. Law schools in America turned majority female in 2016, and they've gotten a little bit more female every year since then. I think now it stands at 55, 56%. The New York Times became majority female in its workforce in 2018. Which is maybe why it was so susceptible to the fads of wokeness and the internal policing and the Slack revolts that took place internally over there. Medical schools are now majority female. The white-collar workforce overall, employees in the United States with college degrees, a majority of them are women. And managers, management positions in the U.S. workforce, 46% female, so almost majority female. So the fact that all of these institutions tipped over to being majority female around the same time that wokeness emerged seemed to me that couldn't possibly be a coincidence.
Yeah. Here's the thing. When you flip men and women, men get softer and women get harder. That's just what happens. That's how you end up in this backward society that we currently live in. When women are put into work environments, they have to operate in a masculine mode, and that's just not how they're built. So instead of fitting into the system, the masculine system, they change it. They soften it and they push for comfort and safety and special rules, and that's where you get all of this DEI wokeness. That's where that comes from. And that's where merit gets completely pushed out, and it's replaced with equality and equity and inclusion and all this idiotic cultural Marxism, social justice, right? Here's the thing about men: we lead differently. We're born leaders. We're born to lead. That's the way we're biologically hardwired. We care about facts, right? We care about what's true, getting to the bottom of things. We want to solve problems. We're very solution oriented. We care about rules. We care about justice. We like structure. And women, they lean more on empathy. Naturally, they want people to feel okay. They want smooth social outcomes. That's why women are drawn to to social justice and collectivist thinking, all of these destructive ideologies, because they hit them in their instincts. These ideas on the sales pitch level, they sound good, right? They sound kind, they sound altruistic, they promise fairness and protection for all, or for the ones that need protecting. But once you build systems around them, then they turn into control. It turns into tyranny. It turns into injustice. You can see it in the hiring process. I mean, women are a bigger demographic year over year in companies because of these woke hiring practices. Instead of basing them on merit, they're based on identity politics, and a lot of places are open about it. They openly try to hire women over men, especially white men, and that's going to change how the whole place works, and not for the better.
And there's so many questions within that. I guess the first stress test of this argument would be, well, they were also very close to being majority female 10 years prior to that, right? So does going from 48 to 52%, is that really such a major shift that it would cause something as dramatic as that?
Well, you'd be surprised. I thought that the higher education workforce, professors in the United States, would have gone female ages and ages ago. But it actually only tipped female in 2023. So we think of feminization as something that happened a long time ago, but it really does take a certain amount of time for time to pass and older generations to retire. But I think the reason why attaining a critical mass of women has such a dramatic effect is that we're not talking about individual differences between individual men and individual women, but differences in group dynamics. For example, you might be able to say from the perspective of psychology as a discipline that women tend to be more emotional than men and men tend to be more rational, or any kind of generalization about men and women might have a certain amount of empirical support based on surveys. But at the end of the day, those differences are not massive, right? Like female support for free speech is greater or is less than male by double digits, but not, it's not like night and day. But when it comes to group dynamics, how does an organization function? How does an institution deal with conflict? When you're talking about those kinds of things, those tend to be more binary. Like either you solve your conflicts within an organization in a masculine way or in a feminine way. Either open conflict is something that your institution will tolerate or it's not. So that's the kind of thing where once you get a critical mass, you really kind of have to pick which one you're going to do.
Well, you mentioned consensus and sort of empathy and including all perspectives. That really...
All right, so you hear this a lot from women. This is a common mistake that you hear all the time, that if women become the majority, that things will be more peaceful, there'll be less conflict, it'll just be nicer, right? But that conflict does not disappear just because women become the majority. The conflict changes. That's why you now have HR. That's where HR came from. Men are very overt and women are very covert. So men, they fight out in the open. You know where you stand with a man. Whereas women, they fight pretty dirty and behind the scenes. They fight very socially. They will through reputation destruction, character assassinations, just gossip, HR complaints, just these quiet punishments. And so it's instead of getting debate, you get HR investigations, right? And then you have people that just vanish, kind of like back in the Soviet Union, right? The secret police, they just vanish people, they disappear you, and that's kind of what HR does. I worked for this one company, and then that's how they did it. You'd see this person, and then they went into HR, and then you just never saw them ever again. People just would disappear. They would go. It was kind of one of those hire to fire places, and just it's on the surface, they make it look polite, But in reality, it's hostile. It's got teeth. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like living under communism, because nobody can speak straight anymore, and everything is political. And that's what you get when places, they stop caring about truth and they start caring about just how things look, and about feelings and all of this fluffy crap, right? Oh, God.
Really isn't what happened with wokeness, though, is it? Because it was more like, we've come to a new consensus and anyone who doesn't agree is going to get killed, basically. Is that really, I mean, that might be the way women deal with this on a group basis. I don't know. You tell me.
No, it's hard to verbalize some of these differences, because it might be a convenient shorthand to say men are more comfortable with conflict than women. And I think that makes a lot of sense, right? But a famous psychology study, very often if you're studying gender differences, and you're a psychologist, the way you'll do your study is you'll just go to a playground and watch the kids playing and observe and count up how many times somebody hits somebody else or something like that. And there was an experiment of that type done, I believe, in Scandinavia, and it had a really funny outcome. The psychologists observed the kids playing and counted up how many fights they had. And they said, okay, we observe that the men fight a lot more than the girls. But then as a supplement, they decided to confirm their observations by talking to the kids and saying, how many fights did you have today, Billy? Or how many fights did you have today, Sally? And their discrepancy was huge. They found that the girls reported having just as many fights as the men. The level of conflict, male and female, on that schoolyard was exactly the same. But their observations had failed to record any of the female conflicts, because when they asked the girls, oh, you had a fight today, what did that entail? It was things like, Megan said she was going to tell everybody they couldn't be my friend anymore.
Which is where words of violence comes from. Or did I imagine your argument?
Yeah, that goes back to my point that boys on the playground, their fights and their arguments are overt. You can see them. They're obvious. Whereas women are very covert about it, and it's through character assassination, reputation destruction, and it's all of these verbal threats.
That's right. And one of the most consistent psychological differences between men and women is women have a strong impulse of caring, right? Which is exactly, I'm not somebody who looks to evolutionary biology for the solutions to all human phenomena, but this particular one does seem glaringly Darwinian, right? That women see helpless things and they want to take care of them. That is definitely something that Darwin would find a pretty easy explanation for. But that's also something that wokeness can easily weaponize. It means that if you can frame your political issue as a way of caring for some helpless class, then you're golden, right?
Minorities are babies.
That's right. But that is.
Yep, just like Home Math talks about in his baby talk video that I commented on the other day.
Is precisely what's going on at a deeper level, and that's why it's been so effective.
Yeah, so this is where the whole caring thing, it gets used as a weapon. Because if you can say that you're protecting someone, then you don't have to argue. You can just throw out accusations. And once a group gets classified as vulnerable, then you're just not allowed to disagree. And anything, and if you do disagree, then what you're saying is considered harmful or violence. And truth and facts, they stop mattering. It's about feelings and who looks like the victim, and that's why this thinking, it spreads like wildfire. It doesn't. Yeah, it's very clever because it doesn't look like power. It looks like just being kind. It looks like kindness, but what you actually get from this is this system where feelings, they beat facts, and anything that actually matters, that has substance, truth gets completely, it gets replaced. And that's how you end up where we are. That's how you end up in places that care more about the, you know, filing the right paperwork and covering their own asses than doing the job right. So.
And Helen, your article, and I encourage everyone to read it, it's fascinating whether you agree or disagree with it, but you cited one particular case, which is the former president of Harvard. So let's talk about that, because you use it as the main example for the thrust of your argument.
That's right. This was back in 2005. So this is before anybody had ever heard of wokeness. Now, I don't know if your listeners in the UK will be familiar with Larry Summers, but he was at that time probably one of the 10 most powerful people in the country. He was not just the president of Harvard. He had also been in Bill Clinton's cabinet. He had been at the World Bank. He was an academically eminent economist, very well connected in the Democratic Party, just a really powerful guy. He was invited to give a speech at a conference on female underrepresentation in science and math, and he decided to deliver his remarks off the cuff and to be really... And actually, if you know anything about Larry Summers, he has a reputation for being a really blunt guy. He's somebody who does not suffer fools gladly. So when you're getting the blunt Larry Summers, you're really getting something quite direct. But the talk was supposed to be off the record. And that's important to emphasize, that the women who listened to what he said and took it to a reporter were violating the rules that they had undertaken to follow when they attended. Anyway, he said that female underrepresentation in the hard sciences was attributable to a lot of different factors, not necessarily just prejudice or bias or...
It's choice. Women don't want to do those jobs because women are interested in people and men are more interested in things.
The patriarchy not thinking ladies can be scientists. There is a difference of aptitude at the very, very, very high ends. If you're talking about people who are going to be tenured at MIT, that's the way out at the end of the bell curve, and there tend to be more men out there than women.
Yeah, we're not only are we the smartest, but we're also the dumbest as well. With men, you get both. You get geniuses and you get freaking idiots. You get complete dunces.
Also differences in taste. That is, women tend to gravitate towards professions and fields where they get to deal with people as opposed to something really cold and abstract like physics. Not
Exactly. People versus things.
to say that no women do, but that is the tendency. So women who are way out there at that end of the bell curve and have the aptitude for a career in hard science would maybe gravitate to something like medicine as opposed to something like physics. So
yeah, you get men who invent, and then you get men who are garbage men. You get men that are very innovative, that are creating these huge companies that are solving these billionaire problems. And then you get just your blue collar guy, these men they're using brute strength to perform their tasks. They're these tasks that keep the infrastructure going. They maintain the infrastructure. They fix the roads. They do all of those particular tasks. Both are needed. But yeah, you've got men who are some of the brightest minds and some that are just normal dudes. And then yeah, you got guys that are pretty on the, got that 60 IQ.
So Larry Summers said all this, and there were a bunch of lady scientists in the audience who said, "How dare you?" And they gave quotes to a reporter, something like, "I felt like I was going to throw up," or "I thought I was going to black out." And it became a huge controversy. And there were a lot of other controversies during Larry Summers' tenure as president of Harvard. So that was not the only thing that brought him down, but it was definitely at the very top of the list. And about a year later, he resigned.
And what's really interesting is with that case, and now I don't doubt that it caused a massive stir when he went on and basically went, "I'm going to freestyle and deliver truth bombs to all of you. So here we are, enjoy it." But he's also, if you get to be president of Harvard, you are going to make enemies aplenty. In order to get to that position, you're going to have to fire people, antagonize people, because that's just the nature of the job. So he would have had loads of enemies who were willing just to pounce at that particular moment, surely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, Larry Summers, that story, that's how this works. He didn't lose his job because someone proved him wrong. He lost his job because people, they felt offended, right? And that's the new rule. It's not, is it true, but did it hurt someone's feelings? That's the new metric. And once that is the standard, anyone can be taken out at any time. No one is safe. there's that's why there's very little job security. Not that there was a lot to begin with, but that really didn't help. But yeah, you don't need facts anymore. You just need all this noise, and that's how it's done now. It's not a face-to-face real argument. It's done through these insidious ways, these complaints, these leaks, media pressure, reputation damage, right? That's the female style of conflict. It's social, it's indirect, and in big organizations, it works. It's effective, and we're seeing the aftermath of its destructive capabilities.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember some of the other controversies that have attended Larry Summers' career, and I believe one from his tenure at the World Bank was when he said, "Are we sure we want to really, really enforce labor laws against having sweatshops in third world countries? Because isn't having sweatshops good for them sometimes? I mean, it leads to economic development." He phrased it in a really blunt way. So like, this is a guy who has a history of putting his foot in his mouth in a way that I frankly find really admirable.
Yeah, but certain people don't. So then has that been extrapolated right the way through society, essentially, is your argument?
That was one of the first times that a cancellation happened, that people heard somebody say something offensive, pitched a little fit, and managed to rob this person of his job. And the particular aspect of it that seemed so full of foreboding looking back is that there was no attempt to debate the issue rationally. There were plenty of people, even people on the Harvard faculty, with eminent expertise in the relevant scientific fields, willing to stand up and say everything Larry Summers said was perfectly within the scientific mainstream. Greater male variability hypothesis, that's, everybody thinks that. So there were people willing to say he's right on the facts. Criticize him all you want for his tone, but he was right on the facts. And the women who went after his job were not willing to have that debate. They were not willing to talk about it rationally. They just said, "I'm offended. I felt like I was going to black out. He was invalidating my career. This is everything I worked for." Very much a feelings over facts kind of thing. And so I don't mind if there are people who are feminists or who have different political views to those that I have, but it's important that we be able to debate them, right? That we have rational arguments. And this was one of the first instances where people just said, "No, I'm not gonna debate it. I'm just gonna say I'm offended," and that's gonna be the end of the story.
Because Jordan Peterson used to talk a lot about this, where he used to talk about one of the ways that females try and destroy or attack other people isn't through the physical realm, it's through reputation destruction. And this is essentially what you're talking about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So yeah, unfortunately, Jordan Peterson, he's become of a sellout, but I don't think he's doing so well health-wise. But because I used to love Jordan Peterson back in 2018. I went and saw him speak here in my city, but that was a great talk, and I've read both of his books. But yeah, this is what Jordan Peterson, this is what he meant when he mentioned reputation destruction. You don't have to hit someone. You just make them untouchable. And yeah, people lose their jobs, and then they get cut off, doors close. And but yeah, it's all in the name of safety and care and inclusion, right? And I have seen this up close in family court. That system is completely gynocentric. It runs on narratives and feelings and bias, not on justice whatsoever. Every now and then justice will prevail, but it's not very cut and dry. I mean, my experience has been full of double standards, and men have a target on their back when they go into family court. They do not get treated like people a lot of the time. They're not treated as an equal parent. They have to plead their case as to why they're a good parent. They're not the mother is automatically seen as the primary caregiver, and she doesn't have to prove much. But but yeah, men, they get treated like they're the problem. You get ignored, you get buried in paperwork. And a lot of the times nobody cares what's actually true. I mean, a lot of men have showed up with mountains of evidence and it all gets ignored. And yeah, men, they get crushed by these systems. There is no compassion for them. There's no real justice. There's policy and process, and the outcomes are devastating. They wreck lives. Meanwhile, everyone just pretends it's being done for the right reasons, and that it's a part of the justice system, right? They call it justice, but there really isn't a lot of justice that goes on. So when these places they get taken over by this kind of thinking, they do not get kinder. They get really nasty. They get mean. They have teeth, and there's there's a lot of punishment and no accountability on their part. And they never have to prove anything. They just have to say, their word is law. And there's a lot I could say on that topic, but that's for another day. But that's what feminization of institutions looks like in real life, right? Nice, kind words, right? Which really, it's policing speech, and then you get these dirty outcomes. And then you have what we have now, this culture that doesn't give a crap about truth. Truth comes last, if it even is on the list at all of priorities, which it doesn't feel like it. It doesn't seem like it is. I use the word feel. Although, yeah, it doesn't feel that way, but it also, it isn't that way in a lot of cases. Truth has just been wiped off the map. So, but yeah, good talk. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.